Hello folks, hope you're having a good day today. Today I want to take a look at Shirley Jackson's classic, The Haunting of Hill House. And what I want to do for you folks is kind of give you a little bit of context of why I'm doing it to review now. As you may know, if you follow this channel, you'll know that I just was abroad in a trip to Iceland. I was there visiting as a tourist, enjoying the local scenery, doing a bunch of fun things that were there too. It was my first time there, and because I'm flying there, I'm flying back, I'm spending a lot of time there, I'm never sure what I'm going to read, so I typically will take a few different books with me, and then try to figure out what I'm interested in reading, kind of when I'm there, or on the way. And so I actually took 3 separate classics with me, and I wound up only reading the horror one. One of them is The Purple Cloud by M.L. Shield, which is still in my to-read list. It's a classic science fiction work. It's one of the first post-apocalyptic works. So I'm going to be reading it at some point in time. It's still in my queue as a soon-to-read. I also have Edison's The Worm or Ouroboros, which is one of the classic fantasy novels from the 20s. It's incredibly strong, it's supposed to be, and I'm really looking forward to reading E.R. Edison's The Worm or Ouroboros. But I actually started to read this one, and I was like about 4 or 5 pages in on the airplane. I'm like, I'm just not in that kind of a place, but I am instead in this horror place, and so I grabbed the book for the Horror Hill House, and I actually finished this of The Haunting prior to arriving in Reykjavik. So that was good. It only took me about 4 or 5 hours to read in the plane proper, so I didn't even actually finish it before. I was done with it before I even left the airport, which is pretty good. I was able to kind of put a pin in it and say, hey, I've read that book, and so forth. So what I want to do for you today is kind of take a look at this book, review it for you, take a look at it, talk about it a little bit, and so forth. So for those of you who may not know, this is probably considered one of the classic haunting of any of the sort of haunted house horror stories. It's probably one of the strongest of those in the genre. It's considered by many to be one of the best horror novels of the century that it was in the last century. It's published in the 1950s. And it really put Shirley Jackson on the map in a major way. You may know Shirley Jackson from some other stuff in addition to this. She did The Lottery, which is a classic science fiction-ish work that she did. It's a short story that's oftentimes codified in a lot of works. I actually read it in my English class, like in 10th grade. Maybe in 9th grade, actually, now I think about it. But I read it in high school. and it's a short story called The Lottery. It's really good. And it has a little bit of science fiction, more of a science fiction feel to it. Maybe fantasy, maybe horror, where there's this lottery in this faraway place, this quiet village where, they're basically taking a lottery to see who's going to end up getting stoned to death. But you don't know that because of how positive and popular the entire thing feels until they start stoning the person, and then everything changes and goes dark and very gothic. And it's fun. I like it. I think it's a good story. Anyway, you may consider that a horror story. I don't know. But anyway, that is a classic story, so you may know her as a writer from that too, in addition to this story. And she did some other novels. Less than 10, but she definitely did some. She's definitely somebody who's been canonized. Like I said, The Haunting of Hill House is a classic, so we're going to take a look at it. So in The Haunting of Hill House, what she chooses to do as a writer, and I think this is a very strong big point for Shirley Jackson. She chooses to write not a story that's traditionally tropified, with all these sort of, fast and flashy scenes that have all these, horror elements and then move on. But instead of what she does is she builds up the mood, builds up the feel of the story over time. She does that by building up the characters, so that you're interested in the characters, particularly the main point of view character, Eleanor, whom you'll spend a lot of time with in the story. You'll learn who she is, why she has these relationships with other people, why the people that are in the Hill House are important to her and aren't important to her. At the same time, she's in her early 30s, so you'll get a chance to get to know her as a character, as the main point of view character for the story too. And again, one of the things that's happening is that you're getting a good, strong feel for the story. So you're going to start out with these folks that have an invitation to the house. You're going to find out who the 4 people are. They're going to be going to this hill house, which is kind of in this long-lost village that's kind of dilapidated and off the beaten path. And so these 4 people are going to be going there. You're going to find out who these 4 people are very early in the story. The first is a sort of academic who has, and she'll tell you in the first couple of chapters the negatives about these people, and then you're going to be All four of them are going to be playing protagonistic roles, not antagonistic ones, even though you're going to be getting the foibles of them right up front, which I think is an interesting way to kind of play it. She'll talk about the professor. The professor has a doctorate degree just because he wants to be taken seriously. He talks about parapsychology and studying like ghosts and ghost phenomenons and such. So he just wants a doctor. He just got a doctorate degree so that he would be taken more seriously while he's chasing all these ghosts and stuff. And so he's set up, he was looking for a proper haunted house so he can set it up and thus be there for experiencing this haunted house that he's found called Hill House. He also has one of the people who is one of the descendants, people who own the house is also going to be joining them too. Talk about how this guy's a little bit of a con man, but not like a main con man, I guess. He's not going to take your stuff. He just takes stuff from the house in like Vegas and stuff. So I guess like she's trying to say that he's not the meanest con man, but he's still, you know, a con man. Anyway, they'll introduce him. This younger guy who's the descendant of people who own the house. They're also going to introduce two others too. Eleanor, who has just had her mom die. And this younger woman who is going to be Eleanor's strong friend. She's kind of a little bit of this party person. She is a major sort of socialite. Both the two female characters are invited to Hill House because they have experienced psychic phenomenon in the past that cannot be written away by various other things. So the professor who is studying these phenomena is inviting these two people to the house to come explore it and to write down their various experiences and journal them in the house as a part of that. He also invites a bunch of other people too, but only two of them actually end up showing up. And so you're going to get a chance to get a feel for that. Now, exploring the house, what happened in the house, why the house is haunted, the characters who live in the house who aren't before people, you'll get a good chance to get a good feel for the house. Now, one of the things that the house really has going for it is it has a really strong sense of itself. Shirley Jackson has done a very good job at creating scenes, creating some drama from them. And again, she won't do it. She'll do it by building up the atmosphere. She won't do it by, you know, sort of traditional sort of horror tropes where she's doing basically the literary version of the jump scare, where from a movie where you've got something that happens on the screen really quickly, and then you're like, oh my gosh, then you back up. That sort of thing. She's not doing the literary version of that, right? She's not getting you to that place and then going, oh my gosh, what's happening? And then back you off. That's not what she's doing. She builds up the mood. She builds out the atmosphere. And it's a very different sort of horror story as a result. And I think it's a much more stronger one as a result too. I've talked before actually in a previous video where I talk about the issues of writing a horror novel as opposed to a horror short story, because it's much harder to sustain the horror feel for a longer period of time. You'll oftentimes have to write another genre in your horror novel in addition to being a horror novel. It may be horror drama, it may be horror sports, whatever, right? Horror sci-fi, whatever. You oftentimes have to add another genre to it to make it work because of the nature of horror in order to keep it going. But this book is actually not that bad. Now, again, I'm reading this Penguin's copy of it, but you can see it's actually not that bad. You know, in here it was only, in this big giant size printing, it was only 175 pages long. And again, I read it, I told you I read it about 5 hours on the plane, but that was with a whole bunch of like disturbances. It probably would have taken me maybe 4 hours less if I wasn't on a plane with a bunch of people, and people always talking to me from the speaker, and I got to put my seatbelt on, and I got to get my drink, and I got to put it down and go to the bathroom, all those sorts of things, right? It probably would have taken me an hour less if I had, you know, not been on a plane on an overnight flight from, you know, Dulles International to Iceland. So, but anyway, there it is for you. I'll go ahead and leave it there for you. Again, I do think it's a very strong story, very well written. I'm very happy to have read it. It was definitely one of the stories that was on my queue that I wanted to read here over the next few days, so I'm very happy to do that, and I figured I'd go ahead and present that for you here today. So again, I'll go ahead and put a pin in it. I'll link you to it below. Let me know what you thought about it. Have you read it? Do you agree with me or disagree with me? If you want to talk about it or engage with it about any of those sorts of things, I'm happy to talk with you about it more. Let me know what you thought about the book or my review thereof. Anyway, if you've watched this video all the way to the end, I just want to thank you for taking some time out of your day. We all have busy days, busy lives and such. So the fact that you spent this time with me, that's really something humbling, and I really do appreciate that. Also, finally, hey, if you like this video, there's no reason not to hit that subscribe button, because we have so many more of these videos to come. So once again, thank you for your time.